What is going on, guys? Garby here, and today, before we begin, I want to add a disclaimer that unfortunately we lost the footage when recording this match for game number 3, so I'm going to go through commentaries of games number 1 and 2, but I wanted to add that disclaimer that unfortunately we did lose the footage of that game, and I'm going to describe a little bit what happens towards the end, but hopefully you enjoy the first 2 matches, and in the future we're looking to iron out to make sure that we don't lose any footage like that ever again. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello everyone, Garby here. Today I am showing you my match versus the Logan Lycanrocs. So for game 1, we are going to get into it in just a second. I'm going to take a look at my team here while we select. I had Cresselia, Hariyama, Blossom, Torkoal, Murkrow, and in the last slot, Rotom Frost. Now Karaiko, they actually brought Ludicolo, Pelipper, Crawdon, Armaldo, Zapdos, and Shedinja. So in this match, when I was preparing, I was actually really ready for Breloom and Shedinja. So I have a lot of cool techs for Breloom. Fortunately, it didn't come, so I can't really talk too much about those because they don't get to be shown in action. But Shedinja is particularly scary if I don't shut it down with some key threats. So I am looking to prepare that in my game 1, not really knowing what surprise sets that they're going to have, because even though I know the Pokemon going into these matchups, it's a critical thing, I don't really know in particular what Pokemon they're going to bring and what movesets they're going to bring. So that's a big deal in these draft league scenarios. So looking into it, first I'm going to start with the classic Hariyama and Blossom for my team. Hariyama providing the fake out support, and in this matchup, my Blossom actually is a surprise set. It's not a support, it's actually a carry set with Quiver Dance. So we're looking to be a setup sweeper and get that started as soon as possible, and hopefully catch our opponent off guard expecting some kind of support Blossom. And just to clarify, once again, I don't know these sets, so I'm like looking to scout here, and being that this is a playback recording, I do know what actually happens in this matchup, but it is still something worth noting that going into this, I have no idea. Now, I'm expecting a Ludicolo fake out in this matchup, so this is a pretty big deal when we're getting into it. I'm expecting this Ludicolo fake out. For me, I am looking to avoid the fake out as much as possible, so I go for a turn 1 double protect. Now, this is pretty predictable to avoid the Ludicolo fake out, but then it gives Zapdos a free turn if it decides to set something up, and you'll see that that actually does happen. So we do the double protect, and then Rainfall, the Zapdos comes in and hits us with a substitute. Now, I didn't expect the substitute, but like substitute's not super uncommon when you're looking at Zapdos sets. Now I'm thinking like to myself, I'm like, okay, it's some kind of like tanky Zapdos set. Chances are it has something like a Roost, for example, and I can start playing around that. But getting into here, the second turn is what really catches me off guard here. So I do a switch in to Cresselia. This, to me, looked like a pretty free switch in because there's 2 special attackers on board. We're pretty especially tanky on Cresselia, and it probably will allow me to set up some Trick Room shenanigans if need be. Blossom is going to get the Quiver Dance set up as well, so we can actually put ourselves in a pretty solid position. The rain boosted Scald comes in, and we do take a healthy chunk of damage. We are actually physically invested because we're a calm mindset, so you want to be more physically invested in most cases, but perhaps that was a mistake looking at the matchup. But the Rain Dance coming out from Zapdos was really the big deal here that I was like, oh no, this is going to be a problem. Because Zapdos being behind a substitute and setting Rain means that something like my Torkoal, for example, is going to have a real tough time maintaining Sun. Now, I wanted to cancel the Rain as quickly as possible in order to get myself some decent speed boosting setup. We're going to get a Sludge Bomb off on Ludicolo here with the Blossom, which is going to be a pretty solid KO for us. But we notice in the second slot, we've pretty much spent our time protecting or switching, which is a huge disadvantage for us in terms of tempo. Karaiko's opener got them amazing tempo, and that's going to help them dictate the match in game 1 here pretty heavy-handedly. Now, even though we netted the first KO, I still feel like I'm in some sort of disadvantage state and really need to put myself in a better position. Yeah, this Thunder coming out was a big deal. Now we got the miss because Thunder having the lower accuracy in the Sun gives us a really, really good opportunity, because that 50-50 coin toss Thunder is going to make it so it's pretty safe for us. Now, this is one of my first big mistakes in the match that I think will end up not helping me very much in game 1. I already stated that I feel like I'm at a disadvantage currently, even though I'm up 1 Pokemon, and that is simply because of this play right here certainly did not help. Now, I have the advantage in terms of number of Pokemon, which is really useful, but in this case, this is where it kind of bites me. So I'm getting nervous that they're going to just continue to hammer on Torkoal. But Caraiko does a but now looking back on it, like kind of an obvious target, and I decided not to deal with it at all. Like, figured you could have Bamboozle with Protect or something like that, but I go for a Sludge Bomb here. I barely don't KO the Pelipper here, which kind of does stink. It would have been perhaps more advisable, actually, because the neutral Sludge Bomb or neutral Energy Ball actually would have picked up the KO. So Sludge Bomb definitely was an error on my part. It was like, I definitely did this match at 6 in the morning, so there's going to be some like little errors that I'm like looking at it like, why did I do that? But like balancing, I'm like, it's a flyer, I have to do Sludge Bomb. So that was a big mistake, and it ended up costing me my Blossom, which really stunk, because as I stated, I was not sure if I felt like I was in a disadvantaged state the whole time, and that really put the linchpin into game 1. The surprise Quiver Dance Blossom was a big deal for taking out a lot of their key Pokemon, and because I didn't actually use the right move to KO Pelipper, and instead of using Energy Ball, I use Sludge Bomb, I ended up like pretty much costing myself game 1 unintentionally. I think game 1 was something that should have been mine, realistically, and maybe I adapted too soon in game 2, but game 1 in particular, I definitely could have won this game by crushing them with Blossom. My surprise Blossom did provide me with a lot of strength that otherwise I don't think I had. But looking at the rest of my lineup, Torkoal doesn't really do much in here besides set the sun, so I need to try to salvage Cresselia as much as possible. In comes Cyclone, though, who was another surprise pick of the match. I didn't like Armaldo was pretty much their solution to Cresselia on top of Crawdon, but in the sun, Crawdon can kind of be pretty weak, where Armaldo doesn't really care about the sun too much. So Zapdos gets the rain set once again, and in this case, this does put me at a bit of an advantage. I'm really concerned about Swift Swim Armaldo. So in this next turn, after I do my Rest Chesto, we're going to have the Rest Chesto come out here, and that will give me a nice, healthy Cresselia. Very defensively invested, so I know we can eat a couple hits from Armaldo here. And we know Armaldo's pretty quick, so what I decide to do here, I decide to, since Hariyama came in, this is a pretty comfortable spot for me, I'm going to Fake Out into the Armaldo. Now this puts me in a good position because then I can get Trick Room up, and then I know in most cases, obviously in the rain, we're going to be faster than Armaldo. So that ends up being a huge advantage to us. So I'm like, okay, I can close this out. This is feeling pretty good. Like, I think I'm in a good position this matchup to do a lot of damage, so this is really nice. So we're going to get into that position here. And then afterwards, I'm really going to like look for a bunch of rock slides and stuff, because like Armaldo's actually weak to rock, which is pretty interesting because for some reason I think rock doesn't resist rock, which is something that's kind of strange in Pokemon in general. But Bug is in fact weak to rock, so we actually get a huge advantage off rock slide there. And Cresselia gets the Trick Room up, so now it should be Hariyama's time to just pop off, which is really great for me. I think it gives me an opportune time for that. I'm going to go into, I think, yeah, either go into Rock Slide to hit both targets, or I go into Close Combat here. Looks like Rock Slide. Oh no, I go into Close Combat because I want to take out Cyclone as quickly as possible, and a super effective Rock Slide is still weaker than a neutral Close Combat off of Hariyama. So Hariyama is pretty destructive in this case, so I'm like really looking, I was like, okay, here we go. We're gonna do a lot of damage, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna set up with Cresselia. Cresselia is in a nice comfortable position, that's awesome. And then Armaldo hits me with an Aerial Ace on Hariyama. And at this point, I'm baffled. I'm like, but normally Armaldo's Swift Swim, and having Trick Room up, this is great. It turns out, looking at the item choice now, like even with no item equipped at minimum speed, we're still slower than my Hariyama. So I'm like, oh my god, this is Iron Ball. It's either Iron Ball or some kind of power weight set to cut the speed in half, just as a Trick Room counter. So I got not only did I bamboozle myself this game, I also got bamboozled by some really cool tech by Caraiko. So this Zapdos set and this Armaldo set end up being a thing that caused me trouble throughout most of the games in our next coming matches. I granted, I did feel like I threw the game away because of Blossom, but at the same time, this Armaldo was definitely an amazing tech by them, and I'm very impressed by that. Like, it definitely caught me off guard and was a really, really cool solution to dealing with my Trick Room shenanigans, which this team is clearly heavily designed around. Pelipper comes back in, provides the rain, which obviously just canceling Torkoal out and any advantage that they can provide. In retrospect, I probably should have just clear smogged into the Pelipper slot, but like realistically, like that wouldn't have done that much into Armaldo, so I didn't know too much. I could have predicted maybe the switch was coming in, but ultimately I didn't. And we take out Pelipper here, but the Zapdos is still just going to continue to rain down Thunders. This is where my Torkoal investment comes into play. We do have some pretty good special defense investment, which I think is really cool. Realistically, with the special defense investment, I probably should have equipped, like, say, a Citrus Berry, for example. My Citrus Berry is on Rotom, which I felt like was probably a better use of the slot, but it clearly would have procced here, which would have been really useful. So, but Citrus Berry does come into clutch in Rotom later in the set, so we'll see that coming up. We try to get a Yawn onto Armaldo to hopefully potentially set up with Cresselia with Torkoal, because this is the only time I'm going to get that kind of advantage. It's not like I can reset the sun without my remaining teammates. That kind of sucks. This is where I start really missing Blossom here and regretting that I threw away the damage by clicking Sludge Bomb instead of Energy Ball, but hey, it is what it is at this point. We're trying to adapt. But as you can see, this is why this Armaldo is such a big deal with that X-Scissors. The crit was very lucky and very fortunate, but like it still did probably about half damage, like a little over half damage even after the crit. So we're still taking chunks out of ourselves. We can't rest through it. We can't really survive it too much. We're going to get pelted by Thunders. So this game is pretty much a wrap. There's no way we can live through Thunder plus X-Scissors from the Zapdos here. So I'll let them take the KO because it's the courteous thing to do, and then we're going to start moving on to game 2 and thoughts about it. So this matchup, I definitely made a mistake and definitely could have swept through with Blossom. Blossom was a major threat that they had to deal with early, and the surprise Quiver Dance was definitely something that I could have taken advantage of in game 1. The regret of not clicking Energy Ball into like pretty much their entire lineup outside of Zapdos was definitely going to bite me there, but the rest of the lineup I felt like was just countered. Like I didn't really... Cresselia was checked, and you'll see that that's part of my adaptation in game 2. Is like I'm very focused on the Cresselia check, and at the time I probably didn't even think about the fact that like I could have got the KO with Sludge Bomb, or not without Sludge Bomb, instead with Energy Ball. But we're just moving on to that, knowing like, okay, they check Cresselia. They have 2 ways to check Cresselia in this matchup, and I can't really deal with both of them, especially because I can't deal with things like the Iron Ball / like power item Armaldo that's clearly on their team over there, that's slower than the rest of my lineup outside of Torkoal, who proved to be kind of useless in the matchup just because he couldn't maintain Sun. So we're going to make an adaptation here. So as soon as I click OK, I'm like thinking about like what I want to do and using this time to like take advantage of that, which probably isn't the most courteous thing, but we're just like, okay, we're going into it. Let's think about our adaptation. And I'm going to do here is going to be where I bring in the other boy, the beefy boys. we got the Rotom Fridge, the thick fridge, and we're going to start with Rotom Hariyama here. And then we're going to, in the back, I'm going to bring in Blossom still, because I was like, yo, Blossom does work in this lineup. I'm not a doubter of that. I was just a doubter of Torkoal and how it supported it. And I was like, man, we just barely missed that KO onto Pelipper. Like, I'm feeling good about it. And again, realistically, if I just clicked Energy Ball, I had that one shot on Pelipper, like, super easily. With the Life Orb boosted +1 special attack Blossom, it was going to pop off. And then Murkrow. Murkrow is the surprise pick of this lineup for me that like did a lot more work than I expected it to. The big deal with Murkrow is that it is hard to take down thanks to the Focus Sash. In addition to that, the speed is really good on it. It like outspeeds a lot of the lineup and can set Sunny Day on command. A Prankster Sunny Day user is going to be very huge in this matchup because it's really hard for someone like to deal with it in terms of using Rain Dance, and they have to predict when I'm going to use Sunny Day in order to cancel the Rain Dance. Okay, so this Ludicolo is back once again. This time I kind of read into the fake out into Rotom, and then I go for a Blizzard anyway and fake out into Zapdos. Now by doing this, this does put me in a really interesting position, because I know the Zapdos doesn't have Protect, so we can't just like Protect through it and like they hope to like break something and get free damage. They withdraw into Pelipper here, and this is where Hacks comes into play. This is the classic Pokemon BS that comes in, and it provides me with a really nice advantage in game 2, and that is I click the Blizzard into this Pelipper after this Hydro Pump misses. So they get a Hydro Pump miss, which I'm pretty much guaranteeing would have KO'd Rotom, and I get a freeze in their Pelipper. So this really puts me at a huge advantage in game 1. I got so lucky, or in game 2, I got so lucky that this freeze happened. And honestly, look at that freeze animation. Like, that's so funny. The Pelipper has his hands up in the air like he's under arrest. Yeah, she's under arrest. It's really funny. Okay, but that being said, we're going to take a huge advantage of this match up here. And because of the fear factor of missing Hydro Pump now is kicking in, you can actually see that the Ludicolo ends up going for a Scald, which is a lot safer. Now, I didn't expect the Hydro Pump to be on their moveset. They never used it in the last game, and I saw Scald. And most of the time, you don't actually expect to see double water moves, which is a cool tech. But because the Scald always hits, we end up living through that, which was super fortunate for us that we actually, like, that Hydro Pump missed, and I was like, oh my god, that would have KO'd if they hit it, and they missed, and I got so lucky. But, yeah, this puts me in a great position. I can just click Thunderbolt freely here, and right into Ludicolo. We start to snowball our lead here. That freeze is going to be just so immense. They have to sack it here. Hariyama does the Rock Slide. Realistically, I probably should have just targeted Ludicolo with the close combat, but I didn't want to lower my own stats. Not KOing Pelipper ends up being kind of an advantage because being frozen is effectively just you being KO'd until you thaw out, which only has a 20% chance of happening. So it really would have been our advantage, like just to our advantage, to have Pelipper just be KO'd effectively, so I can just gang up on the other Mon. But Pelipper unfreezing would also be really bad. It would just click Hurricane and just possibly KO us. So in game 2 here, we're pretty much just looking to like bully down these two as much as possible. Now, that being said, it's not like it's an outright just win for me. Like, I still have to play the game out, and these are very tanky lineup in the back. I'm looking to get as much advantage off of Rotom as possible before it gets KO'd. So I am going to look to click first he does Thunder into my Hariyama, which is also specially defense invested, and we just tank that pretty well. There is an Aerial Ace on the we saw already on the Armaldo as well, which was a interesting tech as well to deal with Hariyama. But this was very lucky for them that my Rock Slide miss, not as lucky as my Freeze, obviously, but the Rock Slide miss was pretty big. And then Cyclone used Rock Slide as well because it should KO Rotom here. And Rotom, being the tough fridge that it is, dodging a Hydro Pump and then now living through a Rock Slide, still goes down to burn, unfortunately, from the Scald. But, man, if it lived with 1 HP, I can't imagine the immense tilt that would have happened. Like, on the other, like, that would have been such crazy hacks. Because that was definitely a roll. It felt like a roll, anyway. So, that burn, though, puts me in a really good position. We're going to swap into my boy Murkrow here. Murkrow getting to show off its stuff in this particular matchup makes it really hard for Zapdos to actually contest us in the endgame, because I can pretty much clinch it with Bellossom, because I know Zapdos only has Thunder, so that Bellossom is going to be so good in this wrap-up match here, like this round 2. So I do Quash here. This basically allows me to Rock Slide both targets, because I know Armaldo's slower, knowing that it is, in fact, a slower speed and not Swift Swim. The Rock Slide, unfortunately, does not KO Zapdos. The Aerial Ace comes out, does KO, or barely not KO the Hariyama, but it will go down to burn. And the Zapdos uses Roost, which was a very good play on their part. Very good read in this position. So Hariyama goes down to its burn, and we're down to 2-on-2. You like think you're like, oh, I had such an advantage due to that opening, but these are some really strong bulky Pokemon that are out here. So this is definitely a not super easy position to be in. The Zapdos can just recover and try to tank everything. Not that I can just easily KO the Zapdos here. So in this case, I do a safe play here. I go for a Protect, and I go for a Drill Peck into the Armaldo. Again, knowing that it's slower, I just want to make this a 2v1 like really quickly and then start to close. I know for a fact that Bellossom here is just going to be at the advantage against the Zapdos. It's got pretty solid special defense, honestly, and Quiver Dance is only going to make that better. So we're just going to drill in here. So Drill Peck gets the Murkrow its first KO of the match. So being the bloodthirsty Murkrow that is, and Thunder comes into Murkrow. It can't miss, but Murkrow has a Focus Sash, so that's totally fine. Murkrow gets to live, and I know for a fact that the Zapdos is bulky, so it is slower than my Murkrow, who has full speed investment because, like, why not? We go for a Snarl here because just in case they put up Substitute, we know we're going to do damage through it, and making Zapdos as weak as possible, knowing that it can't cleanse the debuffs that we're going to put onto it, the stats lowering that we're going to do to it, means that as Quiver Dance makes me go up, the Snarl making it go down means that it's just going to get weaker and weaker every single turn and not be able to contest Blossom even more. It goes for a sub here, which it needs to start being a tank and sub roosting as much as possible. But luckily for us, Snarl goes through Substitute because sound moves travel past Substitute and actually deal damage to the user anyway. So Snarl can just naturally pick up the KO if it hits. So we go for a Sludge Bomb here just in case it misses to break the Substitute. And unfortunately for us, it does in fact miss anyway. But we're going to break the sub here with Blossom, who is definitely faster. And then we are going to Snarl, and Snarl misses. Big sad. But they go for a Roost here. They're trying to play like a tank endgame and try to stall us out a little bit. Hopefully wear us down with some substitute damage and stuff like that. But we do have 2 Pokemon that are faster, so we should just be able to close out this game 2 here and put us at a 1-1 set. So I'm going to click Snarl again, and I'm going to click Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb, if you watch it here, barely doesn't KO. So we're just going to wait for that to connect. And Sludge Bomb comes in and barely doesn't KO. But we get the poison, which is cool. Blossom's really on point with these poisons today. It doesn't prove to really do much of anything because this one, the Lumberry, gets revealed here. So we know Zapdos actually is Lumberry. And we get the Snarl off. And Snarl does in fact pick up the KO here. And that is the end of game 2. So, of course, some big luck for me right at the beginning of the match puts me at a very huge advantage. But Blossom ultimately cleaning up in the late game was super good for us. It just pretty much allowed us to put the nail in the coffin for this particular matchup. So that was really nice to see. And we're just going to go back in. I'm going to use roughly the same game plan in game number 3. But unfortunately, we did lose the footage to game number 3 right after selecting our Pokemon. So I am just going to go through and read off the KOs that I have sent in terms of this match. I did end up winning the match, which was very, very fortunate for me. I wasn't honestly expecting to win as like nicely as I did, because I'm like, man, I got lucky in game number 2, and they really just heavily handedly won. It wasn't luck based at all in game number 1, so I was not thinking that I was going to be able to clutch that out, but it ended up working out in my favor for a couple of different reasons. Murkrow really stepping up this game, and that was very nice to see. But the major KOs here, where we actually came down to a nail biter with the Hariyama and the Zapdos 1v1. The big deal KOs here were Murkrow with a Drill Peck into Ludicolo, as well as Murkrow with the additional Drill Peck into, let's see. So in this matchup, Murkrow KO'd Ludicolo with a Drill Peck. Pelipper destroyed my Blossom right in the early game. I didn't even get to use Blossom this game, which was huge, and I thought I was going to fail because of it. With a Hurricane. Rotom got the KO into Pelipper with a Thunderbolt, so we were able to take that out. Armaldo KO'd 2 Pokemon here, Rotom, Frost, and Murkrow with a Rock Slide. Hariyama got actually 2 KOs this matchup, so Murkrow got most of the KOs last matchup due to the Zapdos KO plus the Drill Peck. But Hariyama did a lot of work, got the KO with the Rock Slide into Armaldo later in the match after it was already burned from the Rotom once again. And then Hariyama KO'd Zapdos with a great read. Well, the circumstances were they were expecting me to Rock Slide and they decided to Roost, and I decided to click Close Combat because I thought it was going to come down to a Thunder Roll with the HP that my Hariyama was at, and they didn't want to risk it, so they tried to do something cushiony, and I punished them with a Close Combat. And that closed the game out, so we actually managed to clutch out game number 3 with just a 1-0 victory with, with our Hariyama coming in clutch at the end and getting some wonderful KOs that I would normally expect to get. But that was the entire match. So thank you so much for watching, and I apologize for the missing footage on game number 3. It was a really good game, and I'm really upset that we didn't get it, but hopefully in the future we won't run into these issues utilizing these different softwares. It was so wild that I lost the footage but not the audio. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you check out all the CGC content on the channel here. We have the entire draft review if you haven't seen it already at the early stages. It is a long VOD, but it is a very interesting VOD to see all the team breakdown. And of course, you can see my other participants in this league posting, my fellow colleagues posting in this channel for all of their matches. and any sort of commentary that comes with that. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.